Hello! So I'm just a few days away from finishing all the writing for the last chapter of Tales of Shells and Dust. And for me, the finishing of this stage, where I reach a point where there's nothing left for me to write in what concerns narration, whether it is for me, whether it is for the Ndole, the little multifasciatus, marks for me the end of the project. After that, it's just creating the audio, the soundtrack, cleaning up the editing, and really finishing up the films. So for me, it is the end of the main creative part. And that makes me, because I started this project 5 years ago, and right now I'm looking back even further. When I first heard about these species, the Neolamprologus multifasciatus, and shell dwellers more in general. And I remember I first came in contact with them and knew to know about them through internet, and I was immediately hooked by what I read, because the thought I had immediately was, well, they're just like me, they're just like us. And I saw they were great storytellers because they were just like us in many ways. And so that made me want to do something creatively about them. And even when I first got the first one in an aquarium, my idea was already to do some films about them. And at the time, to tell you the truth, I didn't know very much about how to make a film. And I remember going to Google and searching how to make a documentary. And the first site that I found had something there that was very influential in these films. It was the first thing I read about making a documentary, and it says something like this: if you have an idea about making a documentary, don't wait until you have everything ready and perfect. Just go and do it. Because if you wait, there are many things that happen. One, you may never reach a point where you actually think you're ready to start it. And two, the drive you have now to create that documentary will lower down with time. It's just natural. And that was a big influence for me to do the first series, Battle of the Shells. And I did Battle of the Shells at the worst time possible, because I was at the end of a very long project that I've been working on professionally, and I was as stressful as I remember ever being in my life, because deadlines and things to do were creating an enormous amount of pressure for me. And I began the documentary right at that point, where when I had no time, I had no equipment, I had almost nothing. The result was that these films ended up being an opposite of the way I was feeling at the time. So, and that happens with me often. I try to create in opposition as to how I feel. It's a way to balance, I think. I don't know, it's not a conscious decision. But so those films were extremely relaxing, almost narcoleptic to a certain point. Very lyrical and very relaxed. Well, it was in the filming. I spent so many hours looking at those, especially the first fish, Pemba, looking at her physically, because I spent almost all day next to that fish tank while working on the things I had to work on the computer, and at the same time filming. But I spent so much time looking at the fish, and then spent so much time looking at the video. I had, I think, over 1,000 hours of footage of that aquarium where I shot Battle of the Shells. that I reached the point where communicating with the fish in a way was easy. And at first my intention was to do a regular documentary, but the fact that I started with just one fish in the tank that didn't do anything made it very difficult to write a documentary that had some text that was adequate to the footage. And I tried to create normal narration and I always failed. And then at a certain point I remember, what if is the fish narrating? And because I looked at the fish and looked at the videos, and it seemed like I was taking a dictation. I had already looked at those fish so many hundreds of hours in real life and in video that just by looking I felt like the fish was telling me what he wanted to say. So it was very, very easy to write from that moment on. And so Battle of the Shells, of course, will always be very special to me. And of course, after I finished, I had this impossible dream of filming these fish in the wild. And I had to wait a few more years before I was able to do it. And I thought I wouldn't never be able to do it, but I did. And well, that will be some story I'll tell on a next video. Meanwhile, I'm going to get back to work here on Tales of Shells and Dust and finish the last pieces of writing that I have to do, which I hope to finish in just a few days. There's very little to write, and right now I'm finding it easy to write, which I think is always a good sign. Well, once again, thanks for watching. Bye bye.